Sentencing is one of the few official activities in our democracy where one American sits in judgment and is empowered to make a decision that affects the liberty of another citizen. Except in rare cases, there's discretion in that sentence. How accurate do you believe judges are in detecting guilt, remorse, likeliness of recidivism, and the like? And secondly, I guess one of the other aspects of your responsibility will be in determining whether sentences are appropriate to the crime. Questions we have to ask ourselves in Congress and don't always get it right. I think one of the worst decisions I ever made was to vote for something called the war on drugs. There was the appearance of something called crack cocaine, and it scared the hell out of us. We thought it was too cheap, too addictive, too dangerous to leave alone. And so as a member of the House of Representatives, I voted for a sentencing disparity between crack cocaine and powder cocaine of 100 to 1. Our goal was to make it clear to America that this was the most serious crime, and our hopes were that it would deter the spread of this narcotic. We expected the price of this narcotic, crack cocaine, to go up. It went down. We expected the number of people using crack cocaine to go down. That number went up. We filled the federal prisons with thousands and thousands, primarily of African Americans who were convicted of those crimes. And only recently, relatively recently, did we repair that damage. So you see, Congress doesn't get sentencing right all the time, and that was an illustration of it. So I've hit a softball or pitched a softball to you, and I'll let Judge Reeves start. Would you like to make a brief comment on your thoughts of what I've just said?
Thank you, Senator Durbin. I think judges are in a unique and excellent position to evaluate whether or not a sentence is necessarily sufficient for the particular offense, because in many instances, all sides are represented. The government is represented by the AUSA. The defendant is represented by the able defense counsel, but the court also has at its disposal the neutral arbiter in that whole thing, the probation office. And there's a lot of information that is gleaned from those competing sources that help drives a judge to get to the appropriate sentence for that appropriate defendant for that appropriate crime.
Ms. Mate?
Thank you, Senator. In what you said, I noticed two things. One, that judges are faced with this very difficult decision to make in sentencing an individual. And this body, in setting policy, is making really tough decisions about what to do on a policy level. I think that's where the commission can be incredibly helpful to both judges and to this body in being that expert body, in collecting data, pursuing the research, hearing input from a wide variety of sources, and collaborating as a body to then make recommendations both to individual judges in the form of guidelines and to this body in the form of reports and recommendations.
Thank you. Ms. Murray?
Thank you, Senator. I was going to say something very similar, which is I think the commission has a number of tools at its disposal that hopefully, if we're fortunate enough to be confirmed, we could be useful to you and hopefully also to sentencing judges through our research arm, through our outreach arm, through the power of convening hearings, to gather sophisticated research to help both Congress and judges in their role. Thank you.
Thank you. And I might just interject. I recently reread the report on child pornography issued by the Sentencing Commission last year, challenging Congress to update the standards of sentencing guidelines, sentencing rather, in the law. We have not accepted that invitation because it's a hard assignment, but we have to play a continuing role working with the commission. Judge Restrepo.
Thank you, Chairman. Sentencing is by far the hardest thing I ever had to do as a judge, and I think most of my colleagues that have been in that position would agree. The guidelines are really helpful. Judges lean heavily on the guidelines, notwithstanding the fact that they're not mandatory anymore. They lean heavily on the research the Sentencing Commission provides judges and the guidance the Commission provides judges. So I look forward to working in a very collaborative nature with my colleagues here in a bipartisan way to advance the goals you identified earlier.
Thanks. Judge Boone?
Thank you. I agree with Judge Restrepo. Sentencing is the toughest thing we do as district court judges, and arguably the most important. Making decisions about whether and for how long someone's liberty will be taken is an awesome responsibility and a humbling task. Congress has given sitting district court judges two important tools to ensure fairness, transparency, and predictability in undertaking that awesome responsibility, the guidelines and the 3553A factors. So I care deeply about the goals of the Sentencing Reform Act as a citizen and as a sitting judge, and I'd be grateful if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed to ensure the goals of the Sentencing Reform Act are met and sharpened. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Gleason?
Thank you, Chair Durbin. I would suggest respectfully, you shouldn't be too hard on yourself for policy decisions that were made back in the 90s. We live in the times we live in. We make policy in the times we live in. One great accomplishment of the Sentencing Reform Act was to create the commission that we all hope to be part of. And I agree wholeheartedly with Senator Grassley. You know, an entity intended to make data-driven, to collect information from all the stakeholders and inform this body, your body, the Congress, and to the extent the commission itself, through the guidelines, creates policy, to do that on an informed, educated, bipartisan basis. Thank you.
Ms. Wong?
Chair Durbin, I care deeply about the sentencing guidelines, and I do believe they play a fundamental role in helping reduce unwarranted sentencing disparities and promoting the type of proportionality in sentencing that you discussed. These are difficult issues, and our system works best with an active, invested Congress paired with a functional commission that can provide research, data, and all that expertise that I know the commission can bring to bear as a clearinghouse of critical sentencing data throughout the country. And I look forward, should I have the great fortune to be confirmed with my fellow nominees, to working with your office and all the other offices on how we can come up with evidence-based improvements to our justice system and help ensure that it is truly delivering the highest quality of justice.
Thank you, judges and judges-to-be, as well as members of the future members of the commission. I thank you for your responses.